If I were to start a consulting firm, I would call it Yitro & Co. Because Yitro is the first consultant in human history. He comes in our Parsha from the outside and offers a unique angle and wisdom and perspective on Moshe's judicial system, which consists of himself as the solo supreme judge. I want to share with you a few insights of this exchange between Yitro and Moshe that Rav Kook shares. The first is the timing. The narrative begins with the words Vayihi mimocharat, and it was the day after. It is unclear when this happened because the previous narrative in the Chumash is Yitro's arrival to the scene, returning back to Moshe, and there being a welcoming party for Yitro. It wouldn't make sense to have the consulting period happen immediately after that because Moshe hadn't been judging yet. Instead, Rashi asserts that the consulting intervention, we could call it, happened the day after Luchot Shniot. The second time that Moshe came down the mountain is when he began to judge all day and all night. And that's when Yitro stepped in to tell his son-in-law that he was going overboard. It couldn't have been after the first Luchot were brought down because the day after that happened was quite messy with the Chet HaEgel, and the Luchot were thrown and destroyed to serve as a corrective for the Chet HaEgel, and then Moshe goes right back up the mountain for another 40 days. So it must be that it happens after the second. That's significant because Moshe had been up on Har Sinai without food or drink for how many days? 80. That's a long time to be living an angelic existence. And so it is understandable why Moshe would throw himself into this work in a way that was superhuman. He wasn't taking any lunch break because he hadn't had lunch in a long time. And indeed, when Yitro asks Moshe to explain what it is that he's doing, Moshe says that this is such an important role that I'm playing, ki yavo elai ha'am lidrosh Elohim, because people are coming to me to seek God. I am their portal to God, and therefore I must play a role that is quite heavy and quite intense, which is Moshe trying to justify his work-life balance being totally out of whack. That's the first insight in terms of the timing of this episode, is that because it followed the second time that Moshe came down the mountain, we can understand why Moshe threw himself into his work with such intensity and the mistake that he might have been making in thinking that he was godly and not human, and that's the role that Yitro plays in humanizing Moshe. The second insight that Rav Kook offers has to do with this phrase, min haboker ad ha'erev, that Moshe was judging from morning to night. And it might be ad va'ad bichlal, including night as well, because the lines were so long that Moshe had extended office hours in order to accommodate all of the people who were waiting. Rav Kook explains that Erev and Boker are two different time periods that make up Yom, a day, and that evening and morning are representative of two different ways to inhabit the world. Boker is a time of productivity, generativity, creativity, whereas Erev is a time of reflection, of renewal, of relaxation. The two of these must be aligned in order for them to be mutually reinforcing. Rav Kook explains that Vayihi Erev, Vayihi Boker, that in creation the night comes before the day, because indeed, in order to spend a day well, you have to plan already from the night before. I remember hearing that the start of the day in terms of one's own psychological well-being depends on how one goes to bed the night before. And this was totally out of whack for Moshe, who was blending together day and night so that there was no distinction between them. So a lesson that we can take from Yitro and Moshe is that we need to try and do a better job sustaining that separation between Boker and Erev, to have times in our life that are dedicated and devoted to rejuvenation, to relaxation, to reflection, so that we can use that time to plan our time of productivity and generativity during the Boker. I hope we can have a renewed sense of work-life balance by thinking about Moshe and Yitro in the first consulting episode in the history of humankind. See you in Shul.